Okay, hello everyone. Those of you still out there who want to take a peek inside the VC's head, you're more than welcome to join us in the audience. With me are three very different venture capitalists. How would you characterize yourself? As Uncle Scrooge, Darth Vader? You know, do give me a pointer here, please.
I wouldn't characterize us in any of those terms, Dark Scrooge or well. I think kind of the fundamental thing is, I think in some of the not very mature VC markets, in some not very mature technology markets, there is this kind of idea, or kind of talk about investors being selfish, investors being tough, investors counting capital and putting pressure on entrepreneurs. But in my mind, it's very clear. Venture capitalists, they're really service providers to entrepreneurs. And there is no.
Could you bring your mic closer? That was a very important statement.
Yes, so venture capitalists, in my mind, are service providers to entrepreneurs. And in my mind, there is no other way to operate, right? It's this, right? It's kind of, we are there to serve entrepreneurs, right? We cannot serve all entrepreneurs because kind of a number of the business models, they just not set up to raise this kind of type of capital, right? So that's kind of my view.
I agree with that. One thing that the entrepreneurs in my country don't understand, and I don't think they don't understand here yet, is a venture capitalist would not exist without you, right? But entrepreneurs do exist without venture capitalists. And I think that's a very simple message, but for some reason, especially in Istanbul, they come to our door. They are very afraid. They look at us as if we are smarter than they are. And I always tell them, if I was as smart as you are, I wouldn't be sitting here. I was sitting there because I'd be an entrepreneur. I'd be creating something. Instead, I'm a glorified bank teller. Just like you go to any bank, you see the guys and girls at the bank giving you money. I just look different. I have a beard and I have a nicer office. But what I do is not much different than what a bank teller does. We have people you don't see behind us who trust us with their money, and they send us out there to talk to companies, and we need to look at you, trust you, understand your business model, which is not always easy, and we need to work on a day-to-day basis with you. Actually, in an emerging market setting, not like in the US setting probably, we actually do work with entrepreneurs on a weekly basis. And they usually need that. So we become their financiers, we become their partners, we become their CFOs, but most of the time I feel like their mothers, their fathers, their siblings almost, because it's all the stuff that we deal with that you cannot put on an Excel sheet usually. They call you when they have a health problem, they call you crying when they are breaking up from their husbands and wives, like they call you when they're drunk. All these things that you actually think that you will never have to deal with, we have to deal with. So it's a very psychologically challenging business as well, I think.
I'll most likely make this panel even more boring because I completely agree with what you said. I think the times of those arrogant venture capitalists are over, not just in this region, but worldwide. And to me, what's most important, as you see, I'm the nice guy, I'm nice to everybody. But I think the relation that you are able to create between the venture capitalist and the entrepreneur is the most important thing. You probably spend more time building your startup than you spend at home. And I guess that everybody here is quite careful about partner selecting for your home. So I try to apply the same for my decision making about investments. So I would not make an investment into a company which is led by a person I don't like. And to me, this is probably one of the most important criteria.
Oh, okay, all fair. But all three of you probably know where the exit sign in this room is, right? That's your main motto, chasing the exit, right?
Certainly.
And that's the only day we make money.
Okay,
Right,
so
so-
how do you achieve that with a large portfolio and a lot of entrepreneurs calling you in the middle of the night when they're drunk? How do you manage your portfolio so
It takes a
you...
special mind, you know. I don't show it, but you're right. That the second you meet them, you love the business model, you love the team, you love everything about it. You like the 4 M's, like the gentleman was talking from France. Everything is there, but the one thing has to be there, and that's the exit, right? And you need to see the exit potential. And in our markets, unlike again our Silicon Valley, counterparts, it's not always obvious what the exit will be or where it will be, right? Because we don't have that many of them. In Turkey, we don't have one unicorn yet in Turkey, right? I think there's one in Slovenia. They told me the Tom the Cat guys. I guess we don't have one.
But they're
So-
not about to exit.
But you know what? We don't have it yet. So we are working towards it. So, and you need to keep in mind, we are in this business to make money for other people, so they can pay us our parts. And without the exits, that's not going to happen. So from the first day when we meet them, that's like the first sign. Everything is great. Is there an exit? Is there a potential exit? Who would it be for this company? It's the natural question we need to ask. We have to ask every time we meet an entrepreneur.
Bahram, what is your relationship with your boss? Who's your boss? Describe this person to us, please.
Well, I work in a VC fund which has one LP, right? So
Could
we
you
have
just put the mic closer.
yeah. So I work in a bank with basically we are a venture arm of EBRD, and we have one LP, and the relationship. What is the relationship? Well, the relationship is quite simple. That we expected to return capital with a certain target return, right? And that's kind of this is at the core of what we do, right? And as Ali mentioned, this is something that we have to ask ourselves when we make investment. But at the same time, kind of, I think the fundamental relationship between VC and entrepreneur and the fundamental dynamics, I personally don't see them being centered around the exit, right? They are centered around building a great business. And building a great business, not just a business which grows and kind of creates a buzz, but building a business which is based on fundamentals, on some very specific fundamentals that actually the business model works, the customers are happy, the customers return, and this is how it starts. This is how basically if you focus on that, everything else starts falling to places. And I guess that's how I would see the discussion of exits being based on those fundamentals.
Jan, how about your boss?
You don't mean my wife, do you?
I don't know, you tell me.
No. I mean, we're in a different situation, so I would call my boss either the entrepreneurs I invested in or my LPs who actually invested in me. And I would say that to a certain extent that relation is very, very similar. So for us, if I go back when we raised our first fund, I would say it's very similar to an entrepreneur raising his first seed capital. And also what Ali said, that he's got entrepreneurs calling him during the night. I've had the same experience with some of our LPs. And having them 30 to manage that relation, and again, it's about relations, it's not easy always, and you have to be very careful about that. So I try to apply the same measures for both sides to my entrepreneurs as well as to my LPs.
Okay, so taking you back to your first time as a VC, how long did you take, and how many pitches did you have to go through to raise enough for a fund. You know, people here in the audience, they're pitching their we all know what off. Was your experience similar?
It was probably even worse. The first fund sometimes is easy. You know, every fundraising, they say either the fundraising is easy or you never make it. For the first fund, it may be a bit different, and I've spoken to many people about their fundraising experience. So it will be interesting to hear your story as well. It took us 18 months, and we didn't talk to many people. We basically addressed people in our network who knew us before, who knew what me and my partner did before, and who what was the most important, they trusted us. So still
So kind of like the friends, fools, and well,
sort
family.
of, yeah. Still, it took 18 months to sort everything out, even though we got soft commitments quite early. But to make it really happen took 18 months in total. We were much more lucky for raising the second fund, actually, which is a different story, and it took us like a month to get the fund up and running. So it was completely different story. And I think if you have a startup that raise seed fund, it may be difficult. You may have the same experience raising Series A when you really show what the investors are looking for.
Ali, what is your experience? You know, back
It's
in
very
the days.
similar. For us, it took 18 months, more than 70 pitches.
I actually, sorry to interrupt, I spoke to a guy who told me that they were raising the fund for 2 years and had 400 meetings. And 4 partners altogether traveled to 400 meetings.
It's not any different than a startup. It's the exact same, stress level, if not worse, actually.
So why do you still make them pitch you? Why do you still make startups pitch you?
Well, I know what I've been through, so it's payback for them now. Right? Because it's money that you're asking for. It's people's money, and I believe when you look at the psychology of VC investment, I think it's one of the biggest compliments that you can get as a human being is getting money from a VC, I believe, or from an angel, because this person looks at you. And they don't know who you are. They have no psychological relationship with you. They don't want to go to bed with you. They're not your mother. They're not your father. They're not your brother. So they have the only thing that they are looking at you for is your mentality, your honesty, like everything that makes you a human being. And then that person takes out something that's worth the same value anywhere around the world, shows you their trust, and they sign something, and I think that's a great compliment to someone. So I take it very seriously when people give me their money. They trust me with their money. I take it very seriously, and that's why I expect from a pitch or from a startup presentation at least that amount of attention to detail or punctuality and everything, because I think it really is a very big, important sign of trust towards a human being.
So you don't look at the actual financial plan, you look at the spelling mistakes in it.
I look at, yeah, we talk, I do read business plans, but I think, in my previous life, I was a banker, and I did write many business plans and, evaluate many of them, and I don't think the business plans are there to give you some kind of a guidance, I believe, and I don't think a 5-year financial projection can be right. The reason we ask people to prepare them is we have a couple of reasons. I want to understand how you're thinking. I want to understand if you analyze your business. I want to understand if you know the matrices and the dynamics of your business. So have you done your homework? Or was it just last night you thought of this business plan and just put it together on a PowerPoint slide? Do you know more about it than I do? Hopefully so. Spelling mistake. I always look at spelling mistakes. I think it's because of my previous career. Spelling mistakes was always a huge thing in our fonts, different fonts. It might sound very trivial, but it shows me how much the detail to it, attention to detail. How much do they care about this presentation, this 10-pager that they email to us that's supposed to persuade us to have a meeting with them. And I think that attention to detail is very important. I think it's a very important sign of how serious they take this process.
Bahram, you look like a numbers and 5 years plans type of a VC. Are you?
Well, I would like to be in that position, basically, because if you're really kind of spending too much of the investment case based on those projections, that basically means that you're looking at a business which is very established, right? Obviously, I think you want to look into those aspects every time, but the extent to which you kind of take into account varies from a stage, right? So if you're looking at the later stage business, you probably kind of, yes, these projections may tell you a lot, right? If you're looking at the early stage business, it's more basically understanding how the founders think about. They think about the market size, they think about the business model. You don't look at it, yes, kind of, I need this Excel, and this Excel basically shows me kind of, in my career, actually, it's hard for me to think when the company actually did exactly what they planned to, right? It would be really by exception, but it is a helpful exercise just to think about some bigger questions: the size of the market, the business model, and what kind of you expect how these elements will unfold going forward.
I might complement it. There's actually one relatively important thing about numbers and planning, and it's actually the cost side, which matters even for the early stage startups. Because if you're raising money, you need to make sure that you raise enough money to achieve the next milestone, and you need to be aware of how much it will cost you to achieve that milestone. And basically, you don't want to get into a situation where your cash is burned before you achieve that milestone. So cost planning makes sense even for early stage, in my view.
Okay, so what, your biggest nightmare is having a portfolio full of people who don't monitor their cash flow? Yeah?
I wouldn't call it biggest, but it's one of our nightmares, I guess.
And especially where we come from, people don't have cash flow statements. Even big businesses don't have cash flow statements, which to me is it's something I cannot comprehend. But of course, they should know how much cash they have in their bank, and then nowadays it's really not that hard to actually figure it out. So.
No, but really, well, when you talk to Japanese partners, they usually ask you deep down in a meeting, so tell me, what is your biggest nightmare? And what is your biggest nightmare? I mean, what wakes you up in the middle of the night as a VC and you scream? Don't tell me you don't have nightmares.
I think, obviously we have multiple nightmares, but just, since, because of, our topic and maybe to the few people who are listening, my biggest nightmare is like a company doing very well, great traction, everything, not being able to get financed for whatever reason, because bad pitch, bad whatever, them being a Turkish company, emerging market company, so being reviewed, poorly by an international investor, and me not having enough money in my pocket to continue sponsoring them. Probably that would be my worst nightmare. Not being able to help a company that's doing very well. That would be my worst nightmare, probably.
I would say mine would go again back to relations, and my biggest nightmare is when the relation goes sideways and people, if they feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, tend to do weird things. So I would be afraid of, motivations very much different on the side of the entrepreneur and the venture fund, leading to some bad behavior.
Can you give us an example of these weird things people do?
Well, they can
Try to squeeze you out of the next
squeeze people out or create side businesses not being honest. It happens in the industry sometimes, and it's typically about, bad relation that somehow evolves over time.
Bakrom, how about you? Do you
Yeah, I
see
would
it well?
agree. I would agree. I think kind of, this the VC entrepreneur relationship is very personal, right? And if I were to think, the worst thing that can happen is the breakdown of this breakdown of the relationship, right? That's I would think kind of the most one of the most serious situations. But fortunately, in my case, I didn't see that this is not something kind of which is kind of issues that I would think it's very rare that you would come across those issues. But in terms of the magnitude of the issue, I would agree that breakdown between the relationship. I mean, the more usual kind of, the more in my experience, the more usual kind of concerns is whether you have the right team being built around the company. That's
So the team is the most important, even decisive factor for you when you're investing?
yes. When you invest, and when you grow, I think the thing that you keep thinking about: do I have the right kind of team? How do I strengthen that? It's all the time kind of you become not a glorified banker, but a glorified headhunter, right? So kind of how do you really kind of help building a great team?
How about the others? Is the team the thing that ticks you off, or is it the product,
It's
the
always a
promise of the
team.
market?
It's
Always
always a team. There are some people, they walk into that room, in the first minute you are like, oh my God, I want to be their best friend. I want to quit my job and work for them. There are really guys like that and ladies like that who really, really impress you. And I guess, like you said, and you want to, because since you work so closely with them, you want to also be inspired by them. You want to feel their energy. So it's a very personal thing. And products change every day, if not every second sometimes. So product they will figure out eventually. So the team itself should be great. And if they are lacking certain parts, which they always do, they should know what those parts are. I think it's always a team.
So how many companies do you have in your portfolios?
Oh, we've got 21 now.
21?
Well, we started recently this fund with BRD. We are 3 years old. We have 9 portfolio companies at the moment.
11.
Okay, so that sounds manageable. I mean, we've had angels on the stage with pretty much the same numbers. You can still spend your time. It's not like you have too many of them and some of them just become rounding errors.
It's different than an angel relationship, though, obviously. So.
Please do elaborate. I mean, apart
Well,
from you having a boss
angel is like
looking
I
for
think
an exit.
that's how I started. I was an angel before I was a VC, and then when you are investing your own money, it's a different stress level. It's a different risk analysis. Everything is different. No one could ask me why I invested that money where. Now every 3 months I have to write a report externally to my LPs. Every month I have to report internally. I have to. It's a different risk analysis. Like I said, I'm spending other people's money does put a lot of pressure on you. And here you have beautiful minds, very creative people who want to conquer the world. They're very excited, and they think you are sitting on this big heap of money, and you're just smoking a cigar and
So
whiskey
Uncle
and laughing
Scrooge,
at
obviously.
them. Which is not the case, actually. You actually have many people behind you that they don't see, and they don't want to see, probably, because they are scary guys. I call it my, pre-beard days when I used to wear a suit and, I was working in a bank and with a tie and everything. It's a different world we deal with on that side. But we need to forget about that and work with the creative guys and, start thinking like they do. But we need to justify everything that we do or don't do to the other guys.
So, okay, I get it.
It's different it's different than an angel because I burned so much money when I was an angel, but no one other than my mother. She always asked me about what I'm doing with my money, but no one else ever asked me about my other investments. But in this job as a VC, people do have to ask you, and they have the right to ask you what you are doing with their money. They hear about success stories that you didn't invest in. They ask you why you didn't invest in them. They hear about your failures. They ask you why you invested in them. So there's always a question as to why you are doing what you're doing.
So you're basically protecting the entrepreneurs from the LPs. What would happen if they met in the same room? Jan?
We actually do that from time to time. So our entrepreneurs sometimes meet the relevant LPs because we've got a group of high net worth individuals as well who used to be entrepreneurs as well. And some of them actually did the route that they tried investing as angels, their own money. And they realized even though I agree with Ali that investing own money is a bit easier than investing third-party money or other people's money. But even that is not easy. And some of them kind of learned it's not an easy way, but they still want to be involved in the startup community and in that space. So they give money to us. And one of their motivation was actually that if we invest in a to them relevant company, they want to get in touch. So that relation sometimes works fine. Sometimes, if you have institutional money, you probably don't want your entrepreneurs meeting the people managing the institutional money and investing like a fund of funds because the mentality is different. So,
Bakram, do you feel like commenting on that?
Well, on the question difference between angels and VCs, I think it's just two different investment strategies, right? I don't think one is easier or the other one is more difficult. It's just two different investment strategies you have to adopt. I think, in my mind, if you're an angel, you basically make a lot of small investments, right? Really kind of focusing on the really personalities of the founders. When you're a VC, you make
You're
more
a glorified
concentrated.
headhunter, which is again focusing on the personalities.
Yes, it is so. But in this case, you are making more concentrated investments. You make less investments. You make more. You put more capital to work, and you have to think about just step further, not just the personnel, but you don't just look into the founder, but you also have to kind of look a step further. Okay, kind of who else is behind the founder, what kind of team do you have, what do you have, how customers use your product, who are your customers, kind of. I think it's two different investment strategies, two different kind of, you can say to a certain extent, asset classes, if you can call them.
Okay, we're nearing the end of what they offered us in terms of time, and I'm sure there's at least someone in the audience who wants to ask something about what's inside the VC's head. Do we have a question? No? Okay, then I have a question. One of the other VCs in the room, let him stay unknown, told me to ask you about the deals you missed, the deals you regret not being there.
you couldn't be in that business if you really regret. So you have to be careful and about regretting. We're not that long in the business, so we don't really see the results of the deals we missed. But I would say I'm quite sorry I didn't make 2 deals in the Czech Republic, one of them being Social Bakers. The other one is a company called Skypicker, which is relatively recent investment. They both seem to be doing quite well. On the other hand, if I look back and look at the reasons why we didn't invest, the reasons are still valid. So I don't actually regret. It was in my view, still wise decision. And as a VC, you sometimes have to accept that you are not able to make all great investments, and some of them just you miss. So I don't regret. The reasons are valid.
Bakram, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of, we also been investing now for a long time. I don't want to use kind of to throw the names because it's, I think, still kind of, it's yet to be seen. Right? But of course there are investments that, opportunities that you regret that you haven't invested. And I think the decision not to invest is as hard as the decision to invest. It's kind of equally important decision.
I have one. It's not a regret. I fully agree with you because when I look at the decision I made, it was the right decision at that time. In 2001, my best friend decided to set up a website to deliver food, food delivery, like Delivery Hero, Just Eat, and I told him not to do it. He didn't listen to me, and he went ahead, and then he came back 6 months later and asked for $200,000 for 40% of the company. It was 2002. I said no. So like 9 months ago, he sold it for $600 million to Delivery Hero. So, um, so yeah, do I regret it? Yes. But when I look at my decision, in 2001, there was no delivery marketplace there was no delivery market in Turkey. There was no ADSL in Turkey. There was no mobile penetration in Turkey. These are all the things I tell myself to calm down. But the good news is he's my best friend still, and he's worth a lot more than I will ever be. So that's the.
I have to say it was easier for me to say I don't regret because none of the two companies I mentioned has exited yet for 600 million. So when it happens, I'll probably regret as well.
The message there is something I tell a lot to at every conference, and that's actually how I started today as well. Entrepreneurs look at us as if we are all-knowing, right? We are all-knowing or powerful. We have this, special grasp of the world and the future. That's why they sometimes take us too seriously. When we say something will work or something won't work, they actually get, too happy or too disheartened. So I tell this story to them a lot. There are deals I missed, plus there are also main deals I made and I wrote off. And I always tell them, if I was that smart, you wouldn't be talking to me right now. If I was really knowing, if I could know what would happen in a couple of years' time, which market would develop, I wouldn't be here right now. None of us would be here right now. And nobody here would be here right now either. So that's why the only thing I think we do know is, it's not the product, it's not the markets. If they are there, that's great. But that's why we actually focus on the team, right? Because if it's the right team, they will pivot. They will make it better. They will shut down the company and do something else. They will attack a different market or the same market from a different angle. Or they will be waiting for the market enough to make it, to let it grow. So that's why I think the one thing that we can control, or the one thing that we can understand is whether it's the right team who will keep a cool mind for the next 5 to 10 years, and it will take that long, I think, at the minimum, especially in our markets.
Can we say that again, just so people really hear it?
Which one?
It would take 5
to 10 years. I always tell them, if you have one shot, if you say to yourself, I will do this startup. If it works out, it will be great. If not, I will go back to my old life. You shouldn't do it. It's a career choice. Being a entrepreneur is a career choice. It will take you minimum of 5 years, and it's a very hectic and stressful life, but it's also very rewarding in many ways, but minimum 5 years.
All right. Do we have some more time for questions?
Hi, everyone. I have a question for all of you. I was wondering how many startups from your portfolio has a woman as a CEO?
Or a founder, for that matter.
Yeah, or a founder.
In our case, one. So now one out of 9, the CEO founder.
4 out of 11.
We have just one as well.
Okay, a follow-up question on that one. Which one of you has female LPs?
My biggest LP is a female, actually.
We do have female LPs as well. Again, it's a minority among our LPs. And we do have a woman in our deal team as well. So we care about diversity of opinions.
Well, we just have one LP. So.
Obviously.
And it's EBRD, so it's a woman.
It's a she. I think I'm getting a nod that we should be slowly wrapping up.
No.
Unless we have any other questions?
More questions are okay.
Yeah? Don't tell me there's nothing else you want to know from inside the VC's head. How about a question from a VC? Moshe, maybe. What do you want to ask your colleagues? They're afraid of your tough questions, just so you know.
they shouldn't, because they all know that we don't know what's going to work anyway. So, and we are all here in order to find the next thing. Actually, I would love to know what's your opinion about the startup that you've seen here in the conference. Have you seen? Can each one of you pick one startup that you think that you would love to invest in?
Nice one.
This is why we are here for, right?
So I was in touch with a couple interesting. If I'm supposed to pick one, I probably liked Apray. Seems quite interesting what they're doing.
Well, I wouldn't say kind of. I wouldn't say kind of that. Obviously, this is not. You cannot say I would invest in this company. But all the presentations that I saw, I like the idea of the basically. I think it's called work labs, or basically monitoring productivity in the enterprises. I think that was an interesting proposition, because we like SaaS products. Which is addressing one very specific, very well defined problems that can be addressed by startups.
So are they going to get a follow-up meeting with you?
Maybe yes.
Maybe yes. I like that. How about you, Ali? Anything interesting out there?
Compared to last year, I was here last year as well, so I'm happy to see that the pitches were much better, and the quality of the teams are a lot better than I saw last year. Last year was very impressive as well. The last 12 months I spent talking about, how impressed I was about Slovenia, and this year I'm even more impressed. And I think the teams are all above average, and there are some very good cases out there. The challenge, it seems, which we have also in our home country, even though we have a much bigger market, people seem to be very comfortable in their own surroundings. Even if it's in neighboring countries, I think you need to challenge yourselves more. VCs, and I don't count myself as a top VC, but the top VCs in this world, which I aspire to be, do not want to see 100% growth a year anymore. They want to see 100% growth every month. It's a very tough world, and the good news is you can sell software and services from here to the rest of the world, but the bad news is the money also sees what the rest of the world is creating right now for startups wise. So you're not being compared to the Slovenian startups. You are being compared to Russian and Brazilian and Malaysian and Turkish startups at the same time, because money is very frugal. It's very mobile. We look at every startups around the world because our investors do. So that's your challenge. So you need to really think of your opportunity cost, and you need to go after big problems, trying to solve big problems, and you need to really aim to grow very, very, very fast. And for that, you need to be thinking global, even if you are not global the day one. The second day you need to start thinking global. Coming back to the second part, I liked the facility, the app that allows hospitality industry to control rooms, and the property management services. Because I think that there might be an interesting market for them where I come from, because we do invest in hospitality companies.
Matej, do we have time for one more question? I see hands popping up. Yeah. We do? If any one of you has obligations and needs to run off the stage, feel free to do that. Okay.
Hello. So I have the question. There is this notion that investors actually like to invest locally. So how important is physical proximity to the startups for you as VCs? So how big are the chances for example, an Austrian company who would like to stay in Austria to get funding from you, for example?
Since none of you is really a red-eye flight away from Austria.
I think indeed, it is, because as we spoke, it's a very personal it's a personal relationship between the VC entrepreneurs. It is very important to be close to entrepreneurs. It's very important for the relationship. It's very important to be able to help. So it's kind of critical. At the same time, I wouldn't say that this is something that this is something that a barrier. You know, we by design, we invest in emerging markets. We're based in London, but we invest by emerging markets, and we invest across, you know, former Soviet Union, Turkey, Northern Africa, Eastern European companies.
Not Czech Republic, though.
Not anymore. So, and you know, when we do so, we like to partner as well with the local VCs. You know, like you know, we invested together with 2on2, and it is. I think it's a good combination.
I think that's what you want, and especially, I mean, depending on where your startup is. If it's early days, you want someone next to you. I mean, yes, we live in a internet world, and everything is on Skype and WhatsApp or whatever. It doesn't really work that way. I feel that I add so much more when I'm next to you. Our next fund will be focusing on Turkey, Eastern Europe, and Middle East, so I'll be able to come here more and more. But even if I do love a company in Europe, I would love to have a lead investor who's next to you, that you can call at night, and he can come over, because it does happen. And if anything, our role will be introducing you to Middle East, where we are very strong. I think the proximity is very, very important, at least at the early days of a startup. Once you're above a certain level, once you have some revenue, some traction, it becomes less important. But I think at the beginning, you want to see that guy or girl once a week, face to face.
We have more questions. The lady over there was first. Sorry, Clement.
Thank you. Thank you for previous question. Well, I'm writing a master thesis on the non-financial factors that VCs provides to the portfolio firms. So maybe a little bit on that, what kind of activities you do with your firms, not connected to the money, but to the more non-financial.
What do you mean
part.
not connected to the money?
I mean, not the money, but the activities they do,
Okay,
they provide to the companies that they
Support.
develop and support. Yeah.
So it's the adding value of venture capitalists, the typical question. I would say there are two models. The companies that create some synergies among the portfolio and try to let each startups help each other. You cannot really do that in this region, in my view, because it requires that you have big enough portfolio of companies in a similar stage and similar space. So how we do it, or what we do exactly, we try to provide resources for certain things that our companies typically need. And the number one is hiring and looking for people, extending the team. So how we do that, we're building the database of contacts. We have partnered and have on board in our advisory board executive search people. And we do share the network of our LPs who have their companies or who've been in the similar space as companies we're investing in. So that's, I would say, the number one, helping the startups to look for the right people to extend the team.
Yeah, I think that's a typical question on the value add of the VCs, and I usually kind of answer there are two things. Yes, you know, we work with companies. We basically help companies in building teams, in recruitment. Also, probably most importantly, we kind of help companies making some difficult decisions. And it's not just because we are kind of smarter than entrepreneurs, but basically because we may have more outside view, or we may have we may be kind of seen similar situations. So making difficult decisions and doing introductions. So we do that a lot. But at the same time, I usually like to add to that, right? My view is when an investor writes a check, right? At that point in time, about 80% of value that the investor can generate is generated. 80, or maybe in some cases kind of 90% of value is generated the moment you write the check. And from there, an investor may add to that to 100%, or if you get the wrong investor, it can get it to 0, right? Kind of. So that's kind of, I think that's important framework that we're here, you know, we're serving you, But at the end of the day, it's all about the founders, in my mind.
I agree. I think HR is one of our biggest value adds. We do actually go through many people's resumes and actually also not just to find them, but also to attract them. Because once I don't know if it's the same way here, but where I come from, there are many multinational companies, banks, advertising agencies who are up to the same talent and who can pay certain salaries that most startups cannot afford. Even if they can afford, young talent don't want to go to those startups because they are thinking, what if they go bankrupt? What if they're not trustworthy? So being at the table, we do help them attract the talent that they want at that table. We obviously help them with their strategy, with their financial reporting, finding new customers, especially on the B2B enterprise level. Those companies really do want to see some other partner, a financial partner with the startup before they trust them with their data, with their day-to-day operations. I think at the end of the day, it comes to the same thing. It's about adding people to the table. That's how I look at it. When I meet a startup, I always tell them, who's at the table, right? The founder is the first investor for me. The co-founder is the second investor. The employees are the investors after that. Then you have the partners, and then you have clients. All of those are investors. And the more of those you have at the table, the easier it will be to attract the next investor at the table. So once you have us at that table as well, it just becomes easier to attract the next investor. Might it be more clients, might it be more investment, or more talent or other workers that you want to attract to your company.
Can we take the last question? Yeah? Nobody's stopping us? Good.
Hi. For startups, one of the tough questions is what is our ideal customer? I will use this opportunity to ask you the similar question. What is a perfect startup for you to invest in?
Don't say unicorn. Not allowed to say unicorn.
I mean, every investor has his own area he likes, and it's typically based on his experience and knowledge.
So what
And
is your personal area?
my personal ideal startup would be a company in education that has great traction and amazing founder who knows the stuff and is a kind person at the same time and wants my money.
Yes, I actually share that view that kind of the most exciting meeting when you meet a startup is actually when you meet a startup, when you meet this founder, is basically you have a benefit of the doubt. Shall I actually give up everything and just go and work for him, and just join his team and just do whatever, buy into that? I think this is the kind of the most the most exciting meetings, kind of seeing deep passion, and also on your side being able to share that passion. Because I think as well, investors add most value when they share the passion that entrepreneurs have. So if you meet investors and they ask you about the cash flow statements, but they don't look into the product, they don't look into the demo, I would just think about this is kind of not a good chemistry. So kind of answering is, ideal startup is a very passionate founder going after big opportunity, and also having the click with investors, having the shared passion for whatever you do.
Very passionate about what they do. Happy people who are smiling, who are very smart, who appreciate what we are doing, what we are trying to bring, and who understand the risk that we are taking as well. Someone who's been there before, ideally a serial entrepreneur who has a couple of unicorns, if not one. Someone who has failed many times, both in their previous endeavors, especially also in their current one. So by the time they come to us, they made the mistakes in their current startup, so they know exactly where they are. Hopefully, they attracted some money already from themselves, from angels. Hopefully, they know exactly what they're missing in their team. They know exactly what their weaknesses are. They have a great team, but they also know that they need more people at the table. Who those people are, what's their name, who are we going to hire tomorrow once we have the funding. They know exactly what the use of funds will be in the next 3 months. 3 months is enough for me. If they can tell me what they're going to do exactly in the next 3 months and how they will use my money, I think all that would make a a great startup. Personally, I love marketplaces. B2B marketplaces and enterprise software is what I really enjoy looking at lately.
Okay, let's wrap this up with personal preferences. Thank you for sharing. I know Bahrom needs to run to the other side of the exit sign because he's got a cab waiting. You two will probably also follow the next exit you find. So thank you, everyone. A big round of applause for our panelists.